Welcome to the debate. The most dangerous psychological predators. They don't announce themselves with grandiose bragging.
No, they really don't.
Right. They sneak in through the back door of your empathy by playing the ultimate victim. And when we examine a covert narcissistic relationship, we are looking at a dynamic that just, systematically destroys lives.
Absolutely.
But the central question we are debating today is, what is the true defining mechanism of that destruction? Is it the calculated predatory masking of grandiosity behind a, shy, depressed, and victimized persona? Or is it the insidious systemic erosion of the victim's reality and nervous system?
Right, and as we look at the clinical and forensic literature on pathological narcissism and trauma bonding, that distinction becomes crucial.
Exactly. So in this discussion, I will expose the calculated, predatory, behavioral mechanics of the covert narcissist. I want to demonstrate how their actions are highly predictable strategies of power and control.
And I will dissect the devastating emotional toll and reality distortion experienced by the victim. Because the true danger lies not just in the abuser's playbook, but in how it completely shatters the victim's psychological foundation.
So when you look at the clinical data on the covert or vulnerable narcissist, you are looking at someone who typically presents as anxious, socially awkward, sullen, and deeply resentful. The common misconception in popular psychology is that they lack grandiosity, but they absolutely do not. They simply weaponize what I call victim grandiosity.
Victim grandiosity, right.
Yeah. Instead of demanding attention by claiming they are the smartest or wealthiest person in the room, they demand it by claiming they are the most misunderstood, the most burdened, the most damaged. They feign crises.
Oh, constantly.
Right? They use emotional blackmail. They are constantly dropping lines like, I guess I'm just used to being abandoned. Or, nobody ever actually cares about my stress.
Which is so manipulative.
It is a highly calculated strategy to extract narcissistic supply. They are trapping their targets in an endless loop of compliance. So if you are listening to this and wondering why your partner's mysterious ailments or profound exhaustion always seem to flare up exactly when you ask them to help with the dishes or take the kids, well, that's not a coincidence.
No, definitely not.
It isn't accidental dysfunction. It is a predatory strategy of power and control, hiding behind a mask of fragility.
I come at it from a different way. Focusing solely on the abuser's strategy, on their extraction of supply, it misses the actual tragedy occurring in the room.
How so?
Well, the covert narcissist's true danger lies in how they weaponize the victim's inherent goodness, their helper instincts. They don't just extract supply, they create a severe trauma bond that physically alters the victim's brain.
Okay, but
Wait, just to finish the thought. The mechanism of destruction here is heavily tied to the fawn response. We talk about fight, flight, or freeze. But fawning is a mammalian survival response where you attempt to appease a threat to avoid being attacked.
Right. Appeasement.
Exactly. The victim cleans the house, manages the abuser's emotions, and justifies thousands of cumulative indignities. These tiny, daily micro-insults. And they do it because their amygdala is screaming that appeasing this person is a matter of life and death.
I see why you think that. But let me give you a different perspective. If we only look at the victim's internal neurobiology, we let the abusers calculate tactics off the hook.
I don't think it lets them off the hook. It frames it differently.
Let's look at exactly how covert narcissists operate day to day to trigger that fawn response. They use passive aggression and weaponized incompetence as primary tools for dodging accountability.
A weaponized incompetence is huge.
Right. So paint a picture of a typical Friday night. One partner is rushing around, managing screaming kids, trying to get dinner on the table, paying the bills. And the covert narcissist, they are mysteriously overwhelmed by work stress, shut in the bedroom, scrolling on their phone.
Always the victim.
Always. They play the perpetually exhausted partner, forcing the other person to handle all the drudgery and all the emotional labor. When confronted, they don't rage like a classic grandiose narcissist. Instead, they retreat into sullen silence.
Right. They play the fragility card.
Exactly. They use their supposed fragility as a shield against ever having to take responsibility. Wait, look at how they use pity in that moment. That's not depression. That's weaponized guilt.
Ugh.
It is a calculated move to shift the spotlight back to their needs the very second they're asked to contribute.
Listen, I just have to take a deep breath when we talk about this because it is so incredibly frustrating dealing with these dynamics.
It really is.
The abuser is directly exploiting the victim's empathy. The victim becomes a one-stop shop. They are the therapist, the parent, the personal assistant.
Yeah, they do everything.
And they absorb that weaponized incompetence not because they are easily fooled by the abuser's strategy, but because their own empathy is being held hostage. And the destruction happens because the victim's goodness is used as the very weapon to dismantle them.
But that's my point. It's a tactic.
Well, it brings up Jennifer Freyd's crucial research on betrayal blindness. The brain literally cannot hold the massive cognitive dissonance of the abuser's shifting masks. It cannot process the paradox that, the person who claims to love me is also the person who is actively destroying me.
Wow.
So to survive, the victim's mind literally suppresses its own perceptions. They edit reality. The victim isn't just complying, they are entering a profound somatic freeze, walking on eggshells and losing their grip on reality entirely.
That's an interesting point, though I would frame it differently. The empathy is being held hostage, yes, but by a very specific tactical maneuver.
Okay, like what?
Let's look at the silent treatment. This is where the covert narcissist truly excels. I look at this behaviorally, like a predator using camouflage.
Camouflage, right.
The covert narcissist uses the silent treatment not as a cooling off period, which is, how healthy people use space to regulate their emotions, but they use it as a calculated intimidation tactic.
Mm-hmm.
They assert total dominance without ever raising a voice. By simply withholding their presence, their affection, and their words for days or even weeks, they plunge the environment into a state of psychological terror.
It really is terror.
It is a dominance play. They sit back, perfectly calm, reading a book or watching TV, while watching the target twist in the wind, frantically trying to figure out what they did wrong.
This is exactly what trips victims up. They think, well, he didn't hit me, she didn't yell at me, so it must not be abuse. I must be overreacting.
Exactly, because it's invisible.
But let's look at what is happening to the victim's nervous system during that manufactured silence. It triggers sheer physiological panic.
Right.
Humans are wired for attachment. Being purposefully ostracized by an intimate partner registers in the brain's primitive structures as a literal threat to survival. Back in our evolutionary history, if you were ostracized from the tribe, you died.
So the body reacts like it's dying?
Yes, the victim is pushed into extreme hypervigilance. They end up begging for a response, apologizing for things they didn't even do, taking all the blame onto themselves just to break the agonizing silence and get a hit of connection to calm their racing heart.
Which is exactly what the abuser wants.
Right, but it systematically erodes their self-worth, it breeds complex PTSD. The damage isn't the silence itself, the damage is the physiological terror it induces, breaking down the victim's identity until they fundamentally believe they deserve to be ignored.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning, because it somewhat minimizes the forensic reality of what the abuser is actively orchestrating.
How does it minimize it?
Well, the abuser knows exactly what that silence accomplishes. They know it breaks the victim down. And that silent treatment does something else too. It isolates the victim in their own home.
True.
And once they are isolated internally, the narcissist begins isolating them externally. That's where we see the deployment of covert gaslighting and proxy abuse.
Ah, the smear campaign.
Exactly. When the direct control starts to slip or when the relationship ends, the covert narcissist shifts to the smear campaign. They deploy a tactic known as DARVO. This stands for deny, attack, reverse victim and offender.
And it's devastating when it happens.
It is, and we need to explain why it works so well. You confront the covert narcissist about an unpaid bill or a lie you caught them in. First, they deny it ever happened.
Right.
Then they attack your tone or your memory, bringing up something you allegedly did 3 years ago. Finally, they reverse the roles. Suddenly, they are the victim of your unreasonable demands and abusive interrogation.
It's exhausting.
It overloads the victim's cognitive processing so thoroughly that the victim ends up defending themselves instead of holding the abuser accountable. But because they are covert, they don't do this loudly in public. They act as a master tactician.
By using third parties.
Yes, they recruit flying monkeys, a term drawn from the Wizard of Oz, representing third parties. Sometimes these are innocent messengers who think they are helping a poor, heartbroken victim, and sometimes they are willing accomplices who enjoy the drama. The covert narcissist feeds them half-truths and carefully edited narratives. They destroy the target's reputation while keeping their own hands completely clean, sitting back and crying while their proxies do the dirty work. It is a masterpiece of calculated predation.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why. The mechanics of the smear campaign, the flying monkeys, the Darvo, they are secondary to the profound isolation it causes.
Secondary?
Yes. Dr. Ramani Durvasula conceptualizes the smear campaign as large-scale gaslighting. Why is that so devastating? Because the victim loses their support network precisely when they need reality testing the most.
Okay, I see that.
I want you to imagine a computer virus. The covert narcissist installs this virus in the social group's network, quietly corrupting how the community views the victim long before the victim even realizes the system is infected.
Wow, that's a dark way to put it.
But it's true. So imagine you have finally, painfully realized you are being abused. You gather the courage to reach out to your sister or your best friend or your coworker for help.
Right.
And you find out the narcissist has already been there, planting seeds for months over coffee dates, expressing concern about how unstable or crazy you've become.
Preemptively ruining your credibility.
Exactly. The victim looks around and sees that their entire reality has been rewritten by their community. This causes total identity erosion. They start to ask, wait, what if I am the crazy one? What if I am the abuser?
Which is a terrifying place to be.
It is. The predator's tactics are terrible, yes, but the true locus of destruction is that the victim's internal compass is completely shattered by that isolation. They lose the ability to trust their own mind.
But that isolation, that rewriting of reality, is exactly why we must focus relentlessly on the abuser's playbook. If you understand the tactical mechanics of the smear campaign, you can anticipate it and contain it.
If you have the energy left to do so.
Well, you have to. You can see the computer virus being coded before it infects your life. This is why I advocate for militant, structural boundary setting, especially when we discuss the exit strategy.
Militant boundary setting.
Yes, we have to stop treating these relationships as emotional bonds to be healed and start treating interactions with a covert narcissist as forensic evidence. You don't try to heal them, you tactically contain them.
Which is incredibly difficult for someone deeply trauma-bonded.
Difficult, yes, but essential for survival. You have to use the gray rock method. This means making yourself as boring, uninteresting, and emotionally flat as a gray rock. So you starve the predator of their narcissistic supply.
Right.
When they try to provoke you, you give one-word answers. You show no emotion. When communication is legally required, like in co-parenting situations, you use Bill Eddy's BIF method for all written correspondence.
BIF, yeah.
BIF stands for brief, informative, friendly, and firm. The friendly part is often the hardest, but it is crucial because everything you write is potential family court documentation.
That makes sense.
You have to look like the reasonable, regulated parent while they spiral. And most importantly, you never jade. You never justify, argue, defend, or explain.
Oh, jade is so important to avoid.
If you explain yourself to a covert narcissist, you are just handing them ammunition to twist your words. You cut off the supply entirely. You manage them like a hostile corporate negotiation.
That's a compelling argument, but have you considered how incredibly difficult gray rock is for a trauma-bonded victim on a physiological level?
I mean, I know it's hard.
It's beyond hard. You are asking someone whose entire neurological survival strategy has been to appease, to fawn, and to hyper-monitor the abuser's micro-expressions, to suddenly become a cold, unfeeling rock.
Right.
Becoming emotionally flat contradicts every single instinct that their brain believes is keeping them safe. Furthermore, when you start gray rocking, you trigger what behavioral psychology calls an extinction burst.
The escalation?
Yes. The narcissist realizes their supply is cut off, and their behavior heavily escalates. They might manufacture a massive crisis, threaten self-harm, or radically escalate the smear campaign just to force a reaction out of you.
That's true. They do escalate.
And if the victim isn't prepared for that somatic overload, their nervous system will crash, and they will cave and go right back to fawning. You cannot just slap a communication protocol like BIF on a deeply dysregulated nervous system. The victim needs deep somatic processing.
Somatic processing is important, sure. But how does it actually stop the bleeding in the moment when the abuser is escalating?
Because intellectual insight into the abuser's tactics is not enough. The body has to unlearn the trauma bond. This is where therapies like EMDR, eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing come in.
Okay, EMDR.
Right. EMDR uses bilateral stimulation, like eye movements or tapping, to help the brain reprocess traumatic memories that are stuck in the nervous system. In a trauma bond, the victim's brain is addicted to the intermittent reinforcement of the abuse.
The hot and cold behavior.
Exactly. The unpredictable cycle of cruelty followed by breadcrumbs of affection, which spikes cortisol and dopamine in a chaotic loop. Until you treat that physiological addiction at the root, the victim will physically ache for the abuser, even knowing cognitively that the person is dangerous.
That makes sense.
You have to heal the nervous system before you can expect someone to flawlessly execute a forensic communication strategy.
It's true that the extinction burst is a period of high risk, and I don't deny the physiological toll. But I would argue that understanding the behavioral profile of the covert narcissist is precisely what allows a victim's nervous system to calm down enough to survive that burst.
How do you mean?
Well, if you know that their escalation is just a tactical response to a loss of supply, if you can look at their manufactured crisis and recognize it as a predictable temper tantrum from a deprived predator, it demystifies the behavior.
Right, it takes the mystery away.
It takes the terrifying power away. Covert narcissism is a highly predictable, calculated playbook. By understanding their use of passive aggression, weaponized pity, DARVO, and proxy abuse, targets can stop taking the bait. They can document everything, shift into parallel parenting, where they disengage completely from the other parent's emotional life, and tactically remove themselves from the firing line. The abuser's power relies entirely on the illusion of their victimhood. Once you see the predator behind the mask, the game is over. The illusion loses its grip.
I agree that seeing the mask is crucial, but I maintain that the true devastation of this dynamic is internal, and so is the ultimate resolution. The covert narcissist doesn't just break your heart, they break your grip on reality.
Yeah.
They hijack your empathy and turn your own best qualities against you. Healing from this isn't just about outmaneuvering a predator in family court or perfecting your BIF emails.
Right, it's deeper than that.
It requires recognizing the profound depths of the trauma bond. It requires overcoming the betrayal blindness that kept you in the dark and painstakingly recalibrating your nervous system so that you can trust your own perceptions and your own community again.
We are arriving at a space where both perspectives are clearly required for a complete picture. Understanding the predator's calculated tactics, the DARVO, the silent treatments, the weaponized incompetence, is absolutely necessary to protect oneself structurally and legally.
Absolutely.
You have to document everything, recognize the manipulations for what they are, and build an impenetrable fortress around your life.
And at the same time, validating the victim's shattered reality is essential for healing the human being inside that fortress. Listeners facing this dynamic must seek trauma-informed support.
Highly recommended.
You need a therapist who specifically understands narcissistic abuse and coercive control. Because standard couples counseling or traditional talk therapy will often just re-traumatize you by treating this as a mutual communication issue rather than a dynamic of psychological predation.
Precisely. High-conflict psychological dynamics require specialized forensic and clinical responses. There's a vast amount of clinical literature regarding personality disorders, coercive control, and the long road to recovery that we have only just begun to touch on today.
It is a profound journey of reclaiming your mind. It is about realizing that the empathy they exploited is not a weakness. It is still your greatest strength, it just needs an ironclad boundary around it.
We leave you with this to consider. The next time you encounter someone who demands your endless empathy by playing the perpetual helpless victim, ask yourself, are you opening your door to someone who is truly injured Or have you just let a predator sneak in through the back door of your empathy?